Hello and welcome back to the channel. Today I'm going to be doing a little bit of player ratings for the entire season of all the Milan players. I have to excuse me, my voice is a little bit under the weather. So just going to kind of go from goalkeeper all the way to attack and give everybody a rating based on how they did throughout their entire performance. That's both including League plus Champions League plus Copa. So let's start. All right, first we're going to go with our goalkeeping squad. Not going to go over everybody, just going to go over the main protagonists. So Ciprian Tadrusanu. He is not as bad as people think he is. I mean, he is not out here trying to be the best keeper in the world. He's a decent second string. I mean, he really shouldn't be second. He should be third. But for what he is, he did okay. I don't think he was terrible. Obviously, he's never going to be great, but he was all right. I give him a 5.5. Mike Maignan, probably my favorite goalkeeper out there. I actually think he's probably the best goalkeeper around. There may be one or two who can play a little better than him on their day, but truthfully, I would take Maignan over every goalkeeper out there. That being said, I'm not going to give him like a 9 or a 10 here because he was injured a lot throughout the season, so it was a huge hindrance to our season. In addition to that, he didn't have some stellar games after he came back from injury. He still was very good, but he wasn't like he normally is. Still, he had a very solid season when he did play. I'll give Mike a 7.5. Next is Davide Calabria, our primary right back. Prior to his injury, he was excellent. He got injured, came back. He was not so great during that time period, and then he healed up a little bit more, came back again, was excellent for quite a while. He didn't play the best versus Inter, but he was awesome versus Napoli, and overall, he had a very solid season. I wouldn't say he's a 7.5 or an 8.5, but he gets a very solid 6.5 from me. Fore Ballatore played a few games here. He was not as bad as he typically is. Usually you can count on him making one mistake that will cause or lead to a possible goal or a dangerous attempt, and he didn't really have that this season, so he's a pretty decent, about like a 5.5. Nothing great, but never anything good. Next up is Teo. In my opinion, I think on his day, when he's really trying hard, Teo can be the best left back in the world. That being said, he does have some stinker games. He has some games where you think he's just not trying that hard, kind of inexplicably, but for the most part, he's a very solid piece of our team. When he's not playing, we look a lot different. He's a massive reason for our success, and Teo gets a 7 this season. Just because he had so many games where you didn't really notice him, and he wasn't really bombing forward like he normally does. Defensively, I will say he got a little better, so 7 for Teo. Next up is Pierre Kalulu. Last season, I would have given him an amazing rating. This season, I really do not think that he played very well. It's very sad because Kalulu was one of the guys who I really thought has always been mature beyond his years. This season, however, every single game he played, he made some type of massive mistake, either caused a goal or led to a dangerous chance. It was really sloppy. His positioning was awful. It was a really bad season from Kalulu. Now, I think that we have to kind of put this one behind us. I think he'll be fine. But Kalulu, in my opinion, was probably our worst of our main defenders. So he gets a 4.5. Pretty harsh rating, but truthfully, he was not good. Serginho Dest. Really not much to say besides he never really had a great game. He had a couple of decent sub performances for a few minutes, but in all honesty, he was pretty much just a disaster, a very poor signing in general. I'm glad that we're not keeping him. Serginho Dest gets a 4. Fikayo Tomori, great last season. Not as good this season. This season he made a lot of mistakes, positionally especially. Against Inter, it was very exposed, I guess you could say. His positioning was very off, and it just didn't look organized. Now, maybe a lot of that is on Pioli and how he organizes the defensive line. Now he has his guys playing this constant high press the entire time and keeping a high line, and it's not always good to keep doing that day in, day out. I like Tomori a lot. Great player, but I have to say it how it is. He didn't have the best of seasons, 5.5. Next up, Simon Kjaer. Very injured for a lot of the season. When he did play, he was good for most of the games, but he did have a couple very bad games. It's hard to rate him anything above just bang average. I'd go between a 5.5 and a 6. I'll give him the benefit of a doubt of a 6. Malik Chow, probably our bright spot of the center backs this season. He didn't have every game as a good game. He had a couple off games, and that's fine. He's young, but overall, what he showed was a lot of potential. He's pretty composed. He's not super fast, but he's not incredibly slow. He's not like Romagnoli slow, but he's probably a little bit speedier than Gabia, so decent pace on him. Decent strength, but he seems like he's still a little bit, under strength for the type of height that he has. But he'll grow into that. He's very, very young. I think he's going to grow into it. His muscles are going to improve, become stronger, and I really think that was a very, very good signing. He's kind of exactly what we need. He's a little bit raw right now, but he's tall, he's strong, he reads the game well, he's pretty calm and composed. He's not this hyper aggressive center back, which both Kalulu and Tomori are. I really think we need to get away from that hyper aggression. I think it's nice to have at least one who's not hyper aggressive. That's why I actually always like when Romagnoli was with Tomori. This is kind of gonna be the same thing. You just have Thiaw and then Tomori as your main, which I like. So Thiaw, what was the bright spot? I'd say he was about a 6.5, so a positive rating for Malik Thiaw. Next up is Matteo Gabbia. He actually played pretty well when he played in most of his games. I think he had one or two games that were not very good, but most games that he was asked to step in, he did quite well. It's surprising to me he doesn't get more game time minutes. I think that people give him flack actually because he's homegrown, so I think he's just on the team because of that. But honestly, he's really not a bad player. I wish he got more minutes. I think he'd be a good asset if he got more playing time. But with his inconsistencies, it's very tough to see him do anything more than just a bang average season. So Gabbia 6. Ismail Benacer, one of my favorite players on the team. He is one of the few players who has true grinta out here. I think him and Tonali. Benacer, injuries here and there. He's really struggles for consistency. I find some games he's just amazing. Other games he's decent. He's never terrible, which I'll definitely give him that. And that's something I'll have to say for him that I really appreciate, is that because he works so dang hard, because he's just always out there giving it his all, he's never going to have like a 4 out of 10 game. But for the most part, he was an excellent player, a big catalyst to our season. I wouldn't say he's like an 8 or a 9, but he's one of the high marks of our season, 7.5 for Benacer. I really hope that he comes back strong from his injury. You never know, because he's such a good player for us, and I think that we really need him going forward. Sandro Tonali, he had a couple rougher games at the start. He seemed like he almost regressed to his prior season form. Not last season. Last season he was pretty excellent, but his first season here. And it was only for a few games, but he really was relied on the entire season. And in general, after those first couple kind of more stinker games, he got quite excellent. He had some stellar games, some standout games, and some average games. And similar to Benacer, he never really had that bad of a game stretch. He's always there, always consistent, always the guy you're going to look to in midfield. And the cool thing is that the later the season went, the better it seemed he got. And I'm hoping he can take that form in the next season. Honestly, Tonali was one of the big bright spots of this team. He was one of the, in my opinion, top 3 or 4 players of the entire season. I think he just edged out Benacer due to his consistency and how good he got towards the end of the season. Tonali gets an 8. Brahim Diaz, as he always is, he's hit or miss. He shows up for a game, he's absent for 2 or 3. Shows up for a game, absent for 2 or 3. The difference this season is that he showed up in a lot of big games, especially some of the Champions League ones, so I'm going to give him a favorable rating of a 6.5. Next is Tomaso Pobega, probably the best of our midfield subs, our midfield depth, which we have really poor depth with guys like Vranks and Krunic. I mean, Krunic I'll get to in a second. I actually think he did decent this season. But Pobega is very underrated. I think he's asked to do way more than what he should be doing. He's not a 2-man midfield player. I would never put him in that system, and you're almost asking the guy to fail. He's a 3-man midfielder, that's that. He's a limited player, okay? He's never going to be some legend, but he can be a very solid backup, a very solid piece to the puzzle who can help, right? He's never going to blow your mind, but he can pop in with some really great goals here and there, because he does have probably one of the best shots on our team, but he's just a little bit gangly when he runs. He's not the best athlete, but he gives his all. He's strong. He's physical. He's got a lot of grit and grinta. He's a solid player. Just can't play him in the wrong system, which he's playing in right now. I would give Pobega a 6. Solid season. Nothing amazing, but nothing terrible. Next is Rade Krunic. Rade Krunic did quite well. Towards the kind of mid to late portion of our season, probably like the third quarter, if you broke down the season into quarters, probably that third quarter there, he did pretty excellent. Last few games, he was pretty bad. And in general, he's not the best of players, but in that deeper role, when he was playing more of a defensive role along with Tonali specifically, he shined. I don't know what it is about playing with Tonali, but Krunic really shined. His positioning, his protection was awesome. Overall, his season was okay, but he had some stellar games, especially in the Champions League run. So I probably lean towards like a 6.5, not necessarily a 7. So I'll go with 6.5 for Radi Krunic. Next is Esther Vrunks, a guy who I do not think we should redeem his loan, and I don't believe we are. I think that's already kind of the dust is settled there. He had a couple decent games. He never really showed anything great. He had decent skills, decent speed, kind of poor decision making, decent passing. Really nothing great. I'd probably lean towards like a 5, 5.5, or a 6. But he did have some poor games. Kind of gave the ball away a little bit here and there. I did not see anything of note, anything special in this guy. I know people really wanted us to play him, but I really never saw anything that got me excited to have him. So I think he's a little bit below average, 5.5 for Franks. Next is Alexis Salamakers. I actually think this was one of his better seasons. I think he was criminally underused. I'm not a huge Salamakers fan. I think he's not a fantastic player, but he is a great depth option for both the left, the right, and I really think he should be a depth option for attacking mid given his characteristics, but lo and behold, he never gets played there. I actually think it's one of his best seasons. I would give him a 6. I mean, I think a 6.5 is too much, but he was pretty solid the entire season and showed a lot more promise. It's crazy that Junior Macias got so much more playing time whenever he was fit, especially later in the season when we really needed any points. Next up, the signing of the season, right? The big one there, we talked about CDK, Charles Cateler. He was pretty awful. Let's just be honest. I'm hoping that he has a great second season. I don't see it. I could be wrong. I hope to be wrong. It happened with a lot of our former players. Kessier took like 2 or 3 seasons to become good. Leao took around 2 seasons to become good. Tonali took 1 season to become good. I mean, a lot of our players, it took a little while. The difference is, and I said this before, all those players showed something. All those players I just mentioned showed something in previous seasons. They showed some talent, some grit, some grinta, a couple amazing plays, or you saw the talent was there, right? Like Thiago, for example. He didn't have a great season. He had a good season, but you can see the talent is there. If he develops further, this guy could be amazing. You don't see that with CDK. With CDK, you see an unconfident kid, right? You see somebody who has maybe decent skills, but he's a little bit gumpy. He's not very fast. He's not very strong. I'm not seeing it. I see that he's got some good game reading. I see that he's got some good skills. That's not going to get you anywhere at this level in a serious league. It might get you somewhere in Belgium. It might get you somewhere in like the Dutch league, something like that, and you might become a decent player overall. But I don't think that it's going to do anything for you in one of the tougher or top 3 leagues here. So I don't see it. I'm hoping he does better next season, but he truly was awful, and I can't think of a single game where I thought he helped us out. He was almost always a hindrance. So you may think it's harsh, but CDK is getting a 2. I really can't pick anything positive that he did besides a couple dribbles here or there. And in general, it was like playing with 10 men. Next, Olivier Giroud, the entire opposite. He is getting up there in age, right? But he still shows up in these big games. He still comes up with some big goals. He does what he can, right? People who hate on Giroud, what more do you want the guy to do? He doesn't have great service. He has one good attacker with him, which is Rafael Leao. Every once in a while, he has a second good attacker in Diaz when he has a good game. And he's a guy who lives off of service. I mean, he's not young, right? He can't run around and create plays and come back and do a bunch of link-up. He wasn't as good this season, but he still showed up when it mattered. Giroud, I don't think was amazing like an 8 or 9, but he wasn't bad, and he was a little bit above average. I'd give him around a 7. All right, Ante Rebic. Used to be one of my favorite players for the team. I really wanted him to get sold last season because I saw him kind of going downhill, and his value was still very high. Now his value is just in the tank. Last season, I think we were going to get like 20 mil or something like that for him, 2025. If we were to sell him off, this season came, we decided to keep him. He was terrible. He got injured. When he did play, he literally did nothing, and now his value is terrible. Rebic, just like CDK, was only a hindrance to us the entire season, so I've got to give him the same rating. He gets a 2. Next is Divock Origi. I'm going to round out the awful ratings that I'm going to give with Origi. Guy's a total waste of space. As I said before, I think we should have went with Belotti over him. No, Belotti's not some great player. It's surprising how far he's fallen actually from his heights, Belotti. but he's a much better link-up player. He tries a lot harder. He doesn't look like a fool out there. He actually makes some good plays. I watch a lot of Roma, since that's my father's team who he supports, so I probably watch almost as much Roma as I do Milan, just because of that. So he was a solid player. Nothing great, but it would have been a much better signing for us here. Origi was terrible. I think he had a couple good dribbles. He popped in maybe a couple of goals. I think maybe 2 or something like that. But those goals meant nothing. They weren't big. They were pointless. And he really was a poor signing. We paid so much money for this guy. Everybody thought he was going to do great. But I mean, I said it before. What did we think he was going to do? He's never scored double digits in any season in his entire life. He was a backup for a reason. Obviously, Liverpool didn't care about him leaving at his age. I think he's only 26, 27. They didn't care about him. They said, fine, go off. Go do what you got to do. Nobody cared about him. That should tell you something. Obviously, we found out the hard way. He's terrible. I hope he goes. He gets a similar rating. He was a hindrance every time he played. He gets a 2. We have Rafa Leao, which is next. He is the bright spot. He is the spark. It took him a while to get started for this team. I mean, back when he was fighting for his spot, with Rebic a few seasons ago, and Rebic was actually the better player. It's nice to see Leao become so much better now and truly become up there as pretty close to a world-class talent. I would say if he gets a little more consistent, he is one of the world-class talents out there. He already has all that in his arsenal. Consistency is going to be key for him, and just a little bit better shooting overall, but he really is our guy. Without him, without Giroud, we do nothing in attack. I'm so glad he renewed, because even if we had to sell him, we're not just going to have his contract run out. But I hope that we build off of this. We kind of use him as a building block in this team, and we go from there. I'm very, very happy with his performance this season. He was huge in almost every big game that we played. He was good in the Champions League. He was good in the league. He was good when it mattered. Rafa Leao gets an 8.5, and he gets player of the season. Next is, and last actually, is Junior Messias. It's a bummer that he's still here. I always say it. I can't believe we passed on Zaccagni and got this guy instead. What a terrible choice that was. He's just not a good player. He doesn't have anything special. He has the Suso move, but he does a worse job at it, right? He always cuts in. He rarely will kind of go by and go to the byline. He might do that here and there, but he basically always cuts in on his left. He looks for a shot or looks for a cross. He does the Suso, right? But he does it worse than Suso. He's not a good player. He should have never been playing as much as he played. I hope we sell him as well. Messias gets a 4.5. Zlatan, I can't really rate him. I don't really consider him even playing for the few moments he did, so no rating there. Last but not least is Pioli. This is where I'll end this video after this one. Stefano Pioli. This is a very hard rating because I don't like how he sets his team up. I don't like the formation he plays. I don't like how tactically limited he is. It seems like he's been playing the wrong formation for such a long time. It's decent, but as I like to say, we play a formation with 2 wingers and an attacking midfielder. We don't have any good attacking midfielders. Diaz is decent, CDK sucks, and nobody else can play it. Maybe Salamanca's good, but he never tried him there. We have 1 good winger. I say again, 1. We have no backup for the left wing. Salamanca's might be able to be okay. He's a decent backup, right? Messias sucks. That's what we have. We have Leao, who stands above all else. If he's injured, we have an average Salamanca's, a bad Messias, a bad Rebic. Like, what do we have on the wings? Why do you play a formation with an attacking mid and 2 wingers when you have 1 good player out of those 3 spots? It literally makes no sense, but this is what Pioli does. He found something that worked decently a little while ago, and he just rammed it through and stuck with it. He didn't adjust. He adjusted once throughout the season. I think it was a good adjustment when he changed the 3-man back line when we were bleeding goals, and then he changed back to the 4-2-3-1. I just really wanted him to play a 4-3-3 or play a 4-3-1-2 if he wants to run with the attacking mid still. Something where we pack the midfield. He could even run a 3-man back line, but actually run more midfielders. Something akin to like what Inter does. He just really needs to focus more on the midfield itself, because that is where our strength could be, especially if you bring in an extra midfielder. You run Tonali, you run Benacer, you run a guy like a Fratesi or Milinkovic Savic, something like that, and then you have good backups now, because now your backups feel comfortable, right? Pobega fits that system. Krunic fits that system. It's just better for our team in general. So I don't like how he does this, and he really almost always picked kind of crappy lineups, right? He'd always start Macias when he shouldn't be starting him. He would try to give CDK some minutes, or it just really wasn't working out. I don't think he's a great coach, but it is also hard to argue with results. We did finish 4th. That's got a huge asterisk on it because really with Juve's penalty, we should have been 5th, but I'll take 4th. And we got to the semifinals of Champions League. That's amazing. Like if you really think about where we were, we won the Scudetto last year. We got semifinals in Champions League this year, and still qualified for it in 4th place, barely with an asterisk, but still we did it. So it's hard for me to give him a massively negative rating. I don't think he is the coach for us. I think he's okay, and if we find a better coach out there, I would love to replace him. But I'm also okay with him staying because at least he's stable and he's solid, and you know what you're gonna get. I'll be frustrated entirely with him every time, every game, but at least he's okay. So I think Pioli, I would have initially done like a gut check reaction, and after the Inter loss in the Champions League semifinals and everything, I probably would have given him like a 4, even with all that progress. But if I take a step back and just give him a rating, with that taking into account how poorly I think he manages a lot of aspects of the team, but with where we actually ended up, I've got to just give him around a 6. I think it's a good season from Pioli. He's average. Overall, the things that I dislike about him a lot, but the results were technically quite good, so he balances out in the middle. That's about it for me today. I'm going to come back with some transfer news and then really discuss what I think we should do, who we should sell, who we should buy, what type of deals we should do, maybe not the exact specifics, but pretty dang close, and how I want our team, at least in my opinion, to look. Remember, it's all opinion-based, right? I'm not some guru, but just what I think. And then I'll kind of show formation at the end of what I think we should be running. Thank you guys for your time. Appreciate it. I'll tune in for the next one when you see it next. And as always, Forza Milan.